Welcome to PCMC Pop Culture Man Children. I'm your host, Mike Fajardo. I'm here once again with my good friend and yours, Mr. Peter Marsh, and we're talking about Transformers. If you weren't here last week, we were talking about the Transformers, the movie from 1986. Today we're talking about Transformers 1, spelled O-N-E. It has a double meaning from 2024. This is one of these movies, and I think there's been like a good, we can make a whole list of them from the last like 10 years where they were like, this is the start of a franchise, and they were successful. People liked them and they made money, but they didn't make as much money as they wanted, so the franchise never happened. There's this, there's Detective Pikachu, there's Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Amongst Thieves, like all good movies that they're not going to be more. This was supposed to be sort of a trilogy that's not going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of sad because when the Transformer movies are good, people don't go to see them. When they're horrible, people, they make $1 billion at the box office.
Yeah, yeah. So let's dive right in. I want to show you something. I was never a Transformer kid. I only have one Transformer toy, and I just got it a couple years ago. This is Ectotron. This is the Transformer that is the Ecto One from Ghostbusters that turns into a Transformer. When you were a kid, did you have all the toys? A lot of the toys? What was your favorite toy?
No, I've been pretty much poor most of my life, so I only had a handful of Transformers. My friend, I always remember he wasn't into Transformers as much as I was, but for some reason he had a bunch of the Predacons, who are Transformers that turn into like animals, and they would form together like Devastator does in the
Oh,
Transformers
I thought
movie.
they were Transformers that go online and talk to underage girls.
Yes,
You're the
yes, that's
Predacons.
there you go. Yeah, yeah. No, luckily Transformers is pretty much devoid of pedophilia and stuff like that.
Oh,
But
good.
yeah, yeah, no, but they would form Preda King, and I was just like so jealous. But I mean, I had like on my shelf over there, I have like Optimus Prime from when I was a kid. But
Nice.
pretty much all my Transformers that I have now are as an adult. I bought
Okay.
them. Yeah,
Did they ever make a Unicron?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Brian has them right behind him when we do our recordings for our YouTube channel.
What, they made him back then, or they made him later on?
They made Unicron not the same time as the movie, but they did make a Unicron in the 80s, and they've made Unicron multiple times since. And he's gotten like bigger and bigger every time they make him. You
Okay.
know?
Yeah, because the
Yeah,
scale is crazy.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So
Uh,
Transformers 1 from 2024, directed by Josh Cooley, screenplay and story by Gabriel Ferrari, Andrew Barrer, screenplay by Eric Pearson, or at least that's all who's credited. There's probably a lot more in
yeah,
contemporary movies. Um, what do you think of this movie, and how does it rank amongst the Transformers films?
that is a really good question. I would say that The Transformers, the movie, which we discussed last week, is my favorite by a mile. Then I think I would actually put Bumblebee after that.
Yeah.
I would put this one. Then Rise of the Beast, which is another live action one that wasn't made by Michael Bay. Then I'd put all the Michael Bay movies.
Okay. Yes. Um, what I used to, what I was once teaching a class, film class, and I used to put a extra credit question where I'd write, "Who's the worst director working today?" And
Wow.
a lot of kids would put Michael Bay. Or
Hmm.
but not that they don't like it. They were assuming that I would say Michael Bay. Um, I
Hmm.
think the answer that I was going for was Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
But all right. So I have another question for you. Amongst the '80s icons, how do you rank them? Like Transformers, Master Universe, Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
How do you rank
Well,
them?
okay. So that's a really great question. I guess the question is, do you mean like their impact and how popular they are,
No, for
or my
you in your heart.
Oh, well, I mean, come on, Transformers, once again, by a mile. I think from my own personal experience, it'd be like Transformers, then Ninja Turtles, then Ghostbusters, above He-Man, and then like Thundercats. I think that would be my ranking.
Thundercats. Yeah, true.
Yeah. What about you?
Uh,
It's gonna be the inverse, right? It's gonna be like
Ghostbusters
Ghostbusters probably
for
first.
sure.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters first.
I
Ghostbusters.
I know that Transformers is gonna be on the bottom though for you.
Yeah, just because it was never. I don't know why it just never. It never. And also, like, I was never into cars. I know they're not all cars, but I feel
Right.
like Transformers kids turn into car adults. I don't know if you're a car adult.
I'm not.
But it would be Ghostbusters for sure at top. Then I think He-Man, then Ninja Turtles, then Thundercats, then Transformers,
Okay.
and then other things in between.
Right.
And then Power Rangers comes a little bit later, but Power Rangers is like another big one for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would actually put Power Rangers above He-Man and Thundercats for me.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so this is called Transformers 1 ONE, and it's like a prequel kind of. And it's a pretty I think it works as a pretty good prequel. You could tell me whether or not this fits within the established lore or challenges the established lore, but from an outsider perspective of just really having seen the movie we talked about last week, Transformers the movie, I think this movie does a really good job at giving a really understandable motivation to Megatron.
Oh
Like they
yeah.
start off as friends, and they're not called Megatron and Optimus Prime. They're called Orion Pax is becomes Optimus Prime, and then D16 becomes Megatron, and they're friends. But Orion is always like pulling. D16 really believes in the system. He really just wants to be like a worker bee. He really he doesn't want to like break the status quo, and Orion keeps trying to like push him to do that. And then when the truth comes out, he's extremely disillusioned. And I don't know, for to me, I never felt like, okay, here's where he turns into the bad guy. Like it really felt like throughout this film it makes sense that that's what happens to him.
Yes, yes. I think it's a natural progression. I think they thought about it a lot. Obviously, like the key thing that they were focused on in this movie was the friendship between Optimus and Megatron, and then essentially how they become two leaders of two warring factions, right? You were asking me like, does this work as a prequel? The thing is, like, and we've talked about this on the show before, that it seems like for each of these franchises, the ones that we all ranked just a minute ago, like they cycle like maybe every 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
It's not even 10 years because it's definitely shorter than that. But it almost feels like every time a kid goes from like kindergarten to fifth grade, they have like a new cycle of
Yes, you're
these,
right. You're right. Yeah.
like new Transformers, new Turtles, sometimes Ghostbusters, new Power Rangers.
Oh, for
Uh,
sure.
yeah,
Power
and then
Rangers Power Rangers renews like every 2 years or something like crazy like that.
right, right, and it stopped recently too. There's been a little bit of a hiatus, but um, so with Transformers, there's always new iterations, and they change like their origin, they change like the motivation for the characters. So like this one doesn't sync up with a particular one. Like this one doesn't sync up with the Michael Bay one. This one doesn't sync up with the '80s cartoon. By the way, the '80s cartoon that we discussed last week, that's considered generation one of Transformers, right?
Okay.
And so it doesn't sync up with that, but then there's always elements that kind of are in each version of them, and so
Mhm.
this has that as well.
Um, do you like this film?
Yeah, I do. I like this movie a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. My daughter Clementine liked it a lot, and I always feel like that's a good sign if like my nine
Sure.
year old daughter likes something. It's like okay, they didn't make it too inaccessible for people.
Right, and it also shows the longevity of the franchise. If a
Yeah,
young person likes it, right, as opposed to like Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire, where like I don't think any kid gave any shit at all. They were like, "Oh,
yeah.
what the fuck is this?" Um,
I'm 43 and I didn't give a shit about it. Yeah,
uh, this movie's gorgeous looking. Look, I want to take a little side quest here and
let's do
talk
it.
about. I want to talk about color.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if you ever saw this little mini movie that someone made, or maybe some journalists made. It's about Jim Carrey, the actor comedian, because he's also like, besides all that, he's a really good fine artist. He's a painter.
Oh, okay.
And I think, and it's a sort of a little bit of like, it's like a 10-15 minute profile of him and his artwork.
Yeah.
And he's a very weird kind of like spiritual guy, and he talks
Yep.
about like he woke up one day and felt like this need for color, and his art changed at that point, and
That's
he
interesting.
started doing these really like primary color like stuff, and I feel that need for color, and I think at some point color became associated with children, and it became associated with fantasy, And the worst part is the inverse of that is grayness got associated with adulthood and seriousness, right? And realism. And I don't know if we could just blame. I don't know if there's any one person to blame, like Zack Snyder or Christopher Nolan or whoever, or if it's just a cultural thing. But
Yes.
I love color. Like
Yeah.
this movie is so, and the same thing with the other Transformers movie. Not the Michael Bay ones. They're very colorless, I think.
Right.
This movie has so much color, and color is so like it literally is a feast for the eyes. Like it feels good to look at color. And
Yes.
watching this movie and some of this, I mean, this is like they have that there's that Instagram page every frame a painting, which is
Yes.
also like kind of like a phrase people say. Like
Right.
that's true for this film.
Yes. Yes. I'm really glad that you brought that up. I know that I've seen a couple of YouTube videos now where they talk about how color in general has like diminished, in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Where like, and it's not just in movies, in animation, it's like across the board, like it's in our designs of things and stuff like that. And yeah, that's probably one of the biggest sins of the Michael Bay Transformers movies. I said this in our last recording that like all the Decepticons are just basically like gray metal bad guys,
Yeah.
and the Decepticons were equally as colorful as the Autobots in the original cartoons.
Yeah.
And it's cool because like color in itself, uh, it, it helps with the narration without anything being said, because a
Yeah.
lot of times like when you have these factions, they'll have their own colors. Even in like comic books, the Sixth Sense does a great job of explaining this, how like the coloring of villains is one way and the coloring of heroes is one way. Like a hero is usually
Yeah.
like red and blue like Superman, and then a villain is like green and purple like the Joker or the Green Goblin. And that's the way it was for the Decepticons and the Autobots. There's a lot of like purple, green Deceptic. I mean, there's not as many green ones, but there's definitely like purple
Yeah.
Decepticons. An Optimus Prime is red and blue, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just like a narrative shorthand for anyone getting into
Sure.
something. I mean, even like Star Wars, for example, we always talk about Star Wars. Um, the Empire is black and white for the most part, right?
Right.
And then the heroes are kind of earth tones. So, this movie, it kind of establishes the two factions with different colors. But what's really interesting about this movie is it's so much more of a class, like a discussion on class for
Yeah.
most of it. You know?
Yeah. Our main characters, I'm gonna call them Optimus Prime and Megatron, even though that's not who they are until the
Yeah,
end, just for
that's fine.
shorthand.
Yeah,
They are they don't have cogs, right? So they can't transform, and they are, I guess, not the lowest class. I get the feeling that the sanitation's the lowest class, but they are
right.
the working class, which are miners, and there's not enough energon to keep everything going, so they mine through Cybertron, through the planet, to get energon, and that's their job. That's their life. They mine. That's all they do. They're stuck there all day. There's no upward mobility in this world. Wherever it's a very much a strict caste system. Wherever
Yep.
you are, you can be demoted down, but there's really no way of moving up, especially if you don't have the ability to transform,
Right.
which seems like itself a marker of have and have not. Like the people above can transform, which this movie does a really interesting narrative thing where they equate transforming with the ability to have the will to change and the will to change your world.
Yep.
Which is, I think, a really interesting way to conceptualize transforming.
Yeah.
And uh Optimus Prime, who's voiced by Chris Hemsworth, is he wants more from life. He has this feeling that something's wrong, that he doesn't like his station in life. He wants to find the matrix of leadership, because the what they believe is that their leader Sentinel Prime is going out every day looking for the matrix of leadership, and when they find this MacGuffin, everything will be good again. They'll all be able to transform. They'll all have enough energon. They could stop mining. They could have a better society. So they
Yes.
all have that carrot that's hung in front of them. It's it feels like real life, man. Like I mean, like it feels like
Yeah.
living in America now.
Yeah.
Um,
and this is going to be real extreme to go into for a second, but the idea of them being born without their transformation cogs is a real horrific
Yeah.
concept, right? And they don't exactly explain how they're born. Like I said in our previous episode, there's all different explanations for like how Transformers are born or made in all different versions. They don't ever say like you're born this way in this movie, but the idea is that their transformation cogs are like removed when
Right.
before they come online. And I thought that this was something that you might take and play with a bit because it's like, what is the human equivalent of that? And I can't think of things being done to babies in history that is the equivalent. I know that people fear that like we're gonna mess with the genes of children before they're born, like now with like
Yeah.
genetic engineering. I mean, this is so crazy. You might even edit this out, but like I know in like some fucked up countries, I know that like for like little girls, they would
Yeah.
like remove their clitoris or whatever so that
Right.
they, so like that was the only thing I could think of that was
Right.
like,
I immediately thought of circumcision.
okay, yeah, yeah,
Circumcision,
yeah,
and they call that female circumcision, but it's much more than that. It's complete mutilation.
yeah, right,
But circumcision itself, although like fairly standard in the first world, is itself a form of mutilation.
right,
But no, it's more. It's just a great. It does hit you as when you find that out in this film, it does hit you as really striking because it feels like I mean a complete violation.
right, exactly,
To take away, their it's almost like taking away their heart or something.
right,
And it feels mutilation, it feels really, really evil on the part of the villain who I mean it's obvious in the beginning, but the villain ends up being Sentinel Prime. He's not this great leader. He is oppressing everybody. No, it's pretty dark. It's not me, not as a Transformers fan really. Like I was like, wow, that's pretty fucked up.
yeah, yeah, and it's funny because there isn't a sequence where they show sort of like an infant. That's not even the right word you could use for Transformers, but like one of them before they come online, like them showing them remove the transformation cog. They don't have a sequence like that, but I think that would almost be like too much to
Right.
show, you know?
But there is a scene where Sentinel Prime is monologuing at the end and he says like, and I rip the cog from your body. It's like really fucked up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like I always thought that that scene in Maleficent, like the Angelina Jolie movie,
I
where
was
like
just
her
thinking
wings
about
are taken
this.
off. It's like that total violation. I mean, that in itself felt like a rape. And uh, it's so crazy to see this kind of stuff in the stuff that you grew up and watched as a kid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it goes there. Um,
Yeah,
so it begins with we see Megatron. He's trying to find the Matrix of leadership. So he's like going through archives and he finds, and we get a little bit us the audience get a backstory of Primus, who is Cybertron or became Cybertron, and birthed all the Primes who were like the original powerful
15.
Transformers, and then the matrix of leadership got lost and everything got bad.
Yeah,
There's a funny sequence where like these he gets caught and there are these like security bots and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, they say something like, "You can't even transform." And he's like, "Oh yeah, really?" And then you see him like start to move a little bit and then just cuts to him running away.
yes, yes, yes,
um, this movie does have some funny shit in it. At one point, the character Alita uses the term GoBot as in a derogatory sort of like, look at these GoBots, which is really funny. If you
yes.
remember in the 80s, GoBots were like the much shittier
Wow.
version of
Transformers. Yeah.
Transformers.
Yes, yes, yes. So I mean, okay, we should talk about the humor because here's a problem. This movie was marketed in a way that I think turned off a lot of people. I
Yeah,
think that like the Transformers fan base, unfortunately, the ones that like pay for movie tickets are into the Michael Bay stuff. They like the kind of the
yeah,
violence. And one thing that we didn't talk about in the previous episode that we should talk about in this episode is in the Michael Bay movies, Optimus Prime is like a stone cold killer. He like executes people. He
yeah,
says things like, "I'm gonna take your face," or like, "I will kill you." Like he says that to some humans and stuff. And What's horrible about it is that he's voiced by Peter Cullen, who is Optimus Prime.
yeah.
And it just feels like such a violation. And I think that this movie, just like so much of the media that we talk about on your channel, on my channels, is like a response to previous versions, right? So when they advertised this, they made it seem like it was this fun kind of movie, like maybe like akin to like the Smurfs or something, where it's like,
Yeah,
hey, we're trolls. Remember these toys from the 80s? And look, it's
yeah.
fun and kid like, but it's not that kind of movie.
No,
It's
I
much
think
more
they advertised it completely wrong.
yeah, yeah. They played. I remember they played the Rolling Stones. "You Start Me Up." That was like the song they redid
Yeah.
for the trailer. And I was like, oh, it looks kind of goofy, but I'll still see it. And then you see it, and it does have those kind of funny moments, goofy moments, but it's much more serious and dramatic.
It's funny. I was thinking about this yesterday too, and I was thinking, like you look at like classic movies. When I say classic, not like classic Hollywood, but like classic pop culture movies, like from our time, like '80s and stuff. And like there's humor in Star Wars, and there's humor in Jurassic Park. There's humor in Jaws. Um, but now you're at a point where like outside of the central drama, all of these movies are basically also comedies.
Yep,
And I don't know if it's true, but the name that came to my mind was James Gunn.
yep,
Is
yeah,
James, and I'm not mad at him for it because he's really good at it. But it
yeah.
makes me wonder, like, is James Gunn the guy who kind of made this change?
Yes, because the example I was going to say was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, like the first one,
Yeah,
right? Because at some point pre-COVID, once studios were like, we can't make anything besides established IP, they're like, okay, we're not going to make any new comedies anymore. Maybe we could reboot a couple of comedies, but for the
yeah,
most part, comedies aren't made. So the way that they make movies now is like they almost make comedies with like superheroic trappings, or like a movie like
right,
this where
yeah,
it's kind of comedic in a lot of parts,
yeah.
but
There's
it's also
genuine
this.
funny shit in this.
Yeah,
Or like
yeah,
I love the new Superman, but outside of its dramatic moments and outside of its superhero moments, there's never like plain, lack of a better word, plain narrative. It's like it's always something. Like if it's not dramatic, if it's not scary, if it's not super heroic, it's comedy.
yep,
Like there's really funny stuff in the new Superman movie, and I'm not a James Gunn hater. I like James Gunn a lot. I like the DCU. I hope that the DCU continues under fucking
Netflix.
Netflix's uh acquisition of Warner Brothers, which I'm not happy about. But you know what it is? I think the problem is other people trying to do James Gunn. Right? Like Star Wars, like people say George Lucas ruined, like some people say George Lucas ruined serious cinema, and it's like, no, he did what he did great, but it's everyone else trying to do him that creates a problem.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because you kind of like quickly went through the people that made this movie, but it's really interesting who actually made it, right?
Yeah,
Because like Josh Cooley, the guy that directed it, he worked on previous like Pixar movies, but then he also made like Toy Story 4, which won the Oscar for like best animated feature for
yeah,
that year, right? And then Eric Pearson, who's the one who's like the main guy credited with the screenplay, he co-wrote Thor Ragnarok, Godzilla versus Kong, Black Widow, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, First Steps. You need a whole bunch of Marvel shorts, right?
yeah,
Like these little short movies they release online. And I feel like that's actually a pretty good combination to make a Transformers movie.
yeah.
But I think in general, unless we're making some kind of serious movie about a serious character like Batman or something, you're gonna have this kind of like hokey, jokey kind of movie
Yeah.
that is aping James Gunn's style, but just not as funny or not as like devoted to the quirky and the weird as James Gunn can go.
Right, 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 right. Um, right. We'll see how the Brave and the Bold comes out. Right, the James Gunn's Batman.
Yeah, I don't want to like derail our podcast, but I actually just saw that the trailer for Supergirl's coming out on Thursday this week. I wanted to tell you that.
I'm very
And then
excited.
you can see he's different, but like obviously like the guy that made this movie, he has experience making movies, but it's not like he's an auteur. Like that's one of the things that they say about Michael Bay. A lot of times they use that term auteur, which is like, there's filmmakers they have like a clear vision, and sometimes they get involved with these IP movies, but a lot of times they're doing their own thing. And I think that unless you have someone that has a clear vision and they're known, like Christopher Nolan, or I mean, there's a lot of them, but like that's the obvious one that comes to mind. Um, it's always this sort of like you said, like almost like they're aping James Gunn, like they're kind of like trying to make a Guardians, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Like Guardians was that was the thing where it was like it's established IP, but it's not anything anyone cares about in the mainstream, and somehow they made it big. Like it's like this thing that people don't care about as much now they care about a lot, right? Because now you could like talk about Rocket Raccoon and Groot, and you could talk about them like you could talk about Spider Man.
no one
Whereas
gave a shit before.
exactly, and
Yeah,
I mean that already happened with like Iron Man and Captain America. Like those were barely anyone's favorite characters when they came out, and now
yeah.
they're just like main characters that
Yeah,
people
it's
love.
funny. Kids today don't understand that Iron Man was not very important before the
No,
Iron Man. All right. So in this movie, we set up the characters. There is this big race called the Iacon, which that's the name of their city, the Iacon 5000, and Optimus Prime is like, if we could get in this race, and even if we won't win, but even if we could beat one Transformer, one Transformer that has the ability to transform, it'll do a lot for our people. It will do a lot for the miners and the people that can't transform. So it's a really interesting sequence. They sort of sneak in and they kind of do good, and they almost come in second place, but then they don't.
right,
And then Sentinel Prime comes to them and they think they're going to be in big trouble. And he's like, that was great. And mining productivity is up. You inspired people, blah, blah. Oh, I want to, you're going to get a personal tour of my whatever. And then he walks away without really setting anything up. And then their sort of like shift leader, who I think, what's his name? Darkwing?
yeah,
He is like, now you're in trouble. You're being demoted. You're being sent down to sub-level 50, which is the lowest, below the lowest level. And the only one working there is Bumblebee. And he just like basically melts scraps. And
right,
Bumblebee is voiced by Keegan Michael Key from Key and Peele. And Bumblebee, he never stops talking, which I guess is the joke, because like he doesn't talk, right, later on, or he doesn't talk in the Michael Bay movies.
right, exactly. And he doesn't talk really in the other movie that's called Bumblebee
Right,
either.
right. But he talked in the original animation, right?
Yeah, so I mean, you just watched the Transformers the movie. That Bumblebee is very different from the
Yeah,
modern Bumblebee, right? And I kind of hate that the modern Bumblebee is like so famous because Bumblebee is one of the most famous Transformers, but he's not the most interesting. He was kind of like a sidekick character to Spike in the original
yeah,
cartoon, you know? And so he's gone through all these different versions. They did that version where he couldn't talk, so that way, like, it'd be he couldn't just do an exposition dump when he first met Spike Sam in the original Michael Bay film, right? It had to be kind of
right.
a mystery, and you don't know what's going on for a little while in the beginning of that movie. But like since then, Bumblebee has been this like action hero that can do all this kind of
Yeah,
crazy stuff, and he's usually held up there the same as like Optimus and Megatron as far as popularity. Like if you ask people on the street, name five Transformers, nowadays they're probably going to say like Optimus Prime, Megatron, Bumblebee, and then two more if you're lucky, you know?
yeah, yeah.
And just Bumblebee never really did it for me as a kid. I never had a toy of his. If anyone like goes to buy me like a Bumblebee toy for like a Christmas gift or a birthday gift, I'm like, thanks, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What do you think it was? Because Bumblebee was kind of a little bit canceled because he originally turned into a Volkswagen Bug, and now the popular the greater consciousness is more aware of the fact that Volkswagen was like manufacturing during Nazi rule, and so some people see the Bug as like a Nazi icon. And in the Michael Bay movie, he's not a bug; he's something else.
He's a Camaro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you think that choice is then what becoming a because a Bug is a cute little car, right? Whereas a Camaro is like a sexy kind of car. You think that's the what makes this change happen?
Yeah, I know that there's like some controversy over like the car form for him, right? And it's like I think that Volkswagen actually at first didn't want him to be represented because he was like, in a war, he was like a violent character. and I think that's why they changed him into a
Right,
Camaro
right, right. Because they're
versus
very,
the inverse. Yeah, yeah. But you know, the reason why that Michael Bay movie works is because that's the idea. It's almost like E.T., where it's like a boy finding an alien, but it's
yeah,
like combined with the idea of like a boy in his first car. That's how they sell that first movie. That's how it works. And you know, he's a beat up Camaro, but it's the idea of like, well, they're gonna like fix him up and he'll be a
yeah.
lot better. And then when you have the Bumblebee movie, he is a Volkswagen to begin with in
Oh,
that.
right, right, right,
Right.
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 By the way, what do you think about the designs in this movie? Because I want to say that again, I'm not a huge Transformers fan. I like that they have solid silver faces. Because in the Michael Bay movie, everything had to be apart. So, like, you look at like Megatron's face, it's like a billion little parts.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's done in the style of the G1 cartoon. There's some really great Transformers comics from Marvel, like from when I was a kid, where they almost look like people just with armor on because of the way the
Yeah.
artists would draw them, and that always holds a special place in my heart. And I like that look of Transformers. I hate the fucking Michael Bay version of the Autobots and the Decepticons.
Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so they're demoted. They find this file that sort of or this like map that tells them like where they think the Matrix
Matrix.
leadership might be. There's a funny Key and Peele reference where Bumblebee has all these like because he has nobody with him, so he's out of junk. He's made friends, and one of them is called AA Tron, which is a reference to AA Ron from the substitute teacher sketch where the kid's name is Aaron and he's like, "Hey, Ron."
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's perfect.
uh, so they decide that they're gonna sneak onto a garbage transport train and get to the surface, and that's where they meet back up with Alita, who's Scarlett Johansson. She sadly is also pink. I don't know why, and she got demoted because of there was a cave in that happened, and Optimus Prime disobeys her order because he wants to save Jazz. So she's like mad at him, and but then the four of them go to the surface. And talking about beautiful and colors, everything on the surface is gorgeous. It's like iridescent, and the landscape is constantly like moving and transforming. There's giant sun, and it's very vapor wavy. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Everything on the surface,
Yeah.
and that's when they see a quintessence ship, and they find out the truth. They go and they find where the map sends them, and they find all the original primes like they're dead like bodies basically,
Yep.
except one of them, Alpha Trion,
Correct.
who's voiced by Lawrence Fishburne. They're
Right.
able to turn him on, and he tells them the true story of what happened, which was that Sentinel Prime wasn't really a Prime. He was like their assistant, and he screwed them over. He had them come meet him somewhere, but it was an ambush, and the Quintessence basically killed them. And he made a deal with them that they could basically have control of Cybertron, and he would get them all of the
Energon.
energon that they want, and he would basically get to live in the lap of luxury. And he stole the matrix of leadership from who was it? I'm not sure. I don't remember
Oh
whoever
shit!
had
All
it.
the different primes. Yeah, I forget which prime had it. Yeah.
And but it disappeared in his hands because he wasn't worthy of it. So it's like
Right.
gone.
Right. Right.
Which
Right.
is why they have an energon crisis, and there's no energon anymore because of what
Right.
he did.
I can't remember the name of. So like, okay, there's all different primes in Transformers stories. That there's usually 13 of them, and I can't remember which one has the Matrix
Yeah.
that he takes. But the one that you need to remember for this movie is Megatronus Prime, because
Yes,
that's where
right.
D16 gets his name from. He's sort of like a hero for him. And Megatronus Prime is always one of the primes in the the continuity, all the different
And
continuities.
his I don't know if this is true for all of them, but in this, his face is the Decepticon logo.
Yeah, yeah. They do that in different versions. There was the worst of the Michael Bay movies is Revenge of the Fallen, the second one, and that the Fallen itself is Megatronus Prime, and
Oh,
that
okay.
has the face like a Decepticon symbol too. Yeah.
Yeah. there's a really cool animated sequence where, to explain everything, Lawrence Fishburne's character, like, he uses like the sand and like the debris around him, and he like it swirls up and it turns into like projected images. That's really cool.
Oh yeah.
And he sees that they don't have cogs, and he's like mortified. He's like, "Where are your cogs?" And they're like, "We don't
Right.
have cogs." And he's like, "All Transformers are born with cogs." And they're
Right.
like, and this is when Megatron is starting to be like really disillusioned. He's like, "I can't believe it. I want to kill Sentinel Prime. I want to murder him." And everyone's like, "All
Yeah.
right, well, take it easy."
Yeah.
We see the quintessence land, and we see they make a big dramatic deal over this. Sentinel Prime bows to them, and they're all like, "Oh my god!" I want to answer. So I had a theory. I brought this up in the last episode. I wanted to run by you.
Yeah.
It seems to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm onto something,
Yeah.
that there is in the Transformers franchise a sort of prejudice, not prejudice, well, a kind of prejudice where humans and being human looking is privileged. And if you're a Transformer that looks like an animal, you're either a bad guy or really, really stupid. Because like the quintessence are insect like, right? And
Yeah.
they're bad. And in this one you have Arachnid, who's like looks like a spider, and she's bad. And like the Dinobots, going back to the 1986 movie, they're good, but they're really stupid. Like the what's the T-Rex one's name?
Grimlock.
He's like really like they make jokes about him being like Lenny from Of Mice and Men. He's like, tell me about the Robo Rabbits again. Um,
Petro rabbits. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any? What do you think? Is there anything to that idea?
Yeah. 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 So, okay. I think that that's not part of the lore or the story,
Sure.
but I
Yeah.
think that that might just happen naturally when people make these cartoons, when they make the comics. You
Yeah.
know, what's really, really interesting, I kept talking about More Than Meets the Eye, the comic that I thought was like the highest point of Transformers media, written by James Roberts, and they go into stuff like that. Like you know, they talk about class in this movie, but like James Roberts was like a political correspondent or something before
Uh
he wrote this comic, and like he wove like really complex stuff. Like Megatron has a fucking manifesto in the comics, and it's like something that you would read in college. It's like, what? How the fuck is this? You know, it's so detailed. And one thing, Brian, if Brian's listening to this, he's gonna get mad at me. But like, I can't remember the term for this, but there's a term in the comics where if you get captured by like the police and the police are corrupt before Megatron takes over, they can do this process to you where they actually like take off parts of your body that are essentially like human like your hands, even
oh
your
wow.
fucking head, and replace it with like tools and stuff. So like
Wow.
you'll sometimes see Transformers like in this movie Shockwave where they have just like an eyeball
Yeah.
instead of a head. So like that process is a way to kind of like dehumanize them and stuff. And there are characters that are animalistic and they've been like mentally reduced. Like Grimlock could actually talk normally uh, in the comics and stuff before he had that speech that he has in the cartoon where he's like, "Me Grimlock, this," you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so in the comics, they kind of address reasons why the characters are like that, but it's sort of like a chicken and the egg thing. I think that when they're made as toys and when they're made as cartoons and stuff, the animals are kind of made to be like less intelligent or villainous, and then they kind of like make reasons for that in the more complex stuff.
Okay. See, I was
Yeah.
gonna ask you for if I wanted to see more Transformers, what you would suggest, and you suggest that comic?
I mean, that comic is fucking amazing, and if you could get into it, I'd be so happy. That would be my first thing I ever promote. However, the thing like if you're kind of like going deeper into the waters, I might recommend Beast Wars, which is like a cartoon from the mid
Right.
'90s.
Yeah, I
That's
remember.
like
I
one of the
remember
first,
the popularity of that.
yeah, it's like one of the first like animated computer animated cartoon shows, right? Where like the whole series is
Oh
computer
yeah,
animated.
yeah,
And in that, all the Transformers are animals.
yeah,
Autobots and
yeah,
they're Maximals and Predacons, and like in every different version of Transformers, they like add some kind of detail to the lore, and then it just kind of carries on to the next version, next version. And
yeah.
this movie almost feels like, okay, we're starting over. This we're showing you all the stuff that we're keeping and we're using. You
Right,
know?
right. Yeah, and this was supposed to be the beginning of a trilogy, and I really wish they would have done the other two.
Yes. Yeah.
Because this is a really awesome movie. Um,
Yeah.
so the plot's pretty simple. Now they decide they're gonna go back and they're gonna tell the people of Cyber they're gonna go back under the surface and tell everybody the truth about Sentinel Prime. But before that happens, a really cool sequence, they get captured by Starscream, who I think is really brilliantly cast. They cast Steve Buscemi to be Starscream because he has a naturally like gravelly voice.
Yeah.
I think that's very good casting.
I kind of actually hate it, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so Starscream has a very distinct voice. It's the
Yeah.
same voice as Cobra Commander in
Yes.
G.I. Joe.
Basically the exact same voice, right?
It's the same actor, you know?
Yeah.
And so I love that Starscream voice, and there's been different versions of Starscream throughout the years. He doesn't have that voice. Like in one version of Transformers Prime, the guy that does Spike Spiegel from Cowboy
Yeah,
Bebop,
yeah, yeah.
Starscream, and he doesn't do that kind of scratchy voice. And then they do this thing where like D16 like chokes Starscream and it messes up his like voice emitter. And
Yes.
so like it gives him that kind of that almost like whiny voice. And I just I hate that. It's like it makes him a joke. I mean, Starscream is a joke, but like I don't know. I don't like that angle. I'm sorry.
Okay. Um, when they're with Starscream, um, like Optimus Prime is trying to like be like, "Oh, we're on the same side," but then Megatron just gets up and starts walking away, and he's like, "Where are you going?" And he's like, I'm going to. I don't want to listen to you. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go kill something." And basically, you see like all the others start to see him as a leader because he's so tough to Starscream.
Right.
But at this point, they're not like really at odds with each other. There's a funny bit where Bumblebee's like, "Oh, it's Shockwave, it's Soundwave. Raise your hand if you have wave in your name."
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
it's funny stuff like that. Um, so they decide they're gonna go and they're gonna go to the city and what do you call it? But then Sentinel Prime's people come and attack and they capture some of them. They capture Megatron and they capture Bumblebee and Starscream. Alita and Optimus Prime are not captured, so they make their way to the city, and that kind of like it's a pretty short movie.
Yes.
It's sort of short and sweet, and it goes down easy. So they go and what do you call it? John Hamm plays Sentinel Prime, and he's a good. I think he's good because he's sort of like snarky, and he's sort of Oh, I remember what I wanted to ask you. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about Peter Cullen not being in this at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's been like dozens of different versions of Transformers, right? The different cartoons, the live action movies. Peter Cullen's in a lot of them, but then there are other versions of it where it's a different voice actor. And pretty much like almost every single time, it's someone sort of like imitating Peter Cullen. And I feel like Chris Hemsworth is imitating Peter Cullen at the end when he
Yes,
becomes Optimus
yes.
Prime.
It's not
Um,
great. Like it's kind of bad. You could feel him trying to do Peter Cullen really hard.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, this is like an age-old thing where people are like, why don't you cast established voice actors for these roles because they do such a good job versus like a famous Hollywood person? And I think that the logic is they think that casting someone famous is going to draw people in, but I don't think it really works. You know, like with like something like Shrek, it kind of works because it's not this like established thing and like
Also, comedic voice, like you're doing something. But like,
y-
what? Who gives a shit? Like the best example that people use is Justin Timberlake playing Boo Boo in the Yogi Bear movie. Like, who could give a shit? Who's like, oh, I like Justin Timberlake. Let me go see the. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, what are you getting? And you've got
right.
all these great like voice actors that like don't get to be in these things.
Right, exactly, exactly. Like, I mean, I don't know. I think Brian Tyree Henry actually brings a lot as
Yes, I
D16,
agree. Yeah.
you know. But then the rest of the characters, with the exception of Keegan Michael Key, it's like there's not that much to them. Where I feel like you could have a regular voice actor play them, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't matter, you know.
Yeah.
But they throw Scarlett Johansson in there, and I was going to ask you, like, how do you feel about Scarlett Johansson in general?
Um, I don't have a lot of feelings about her.
It's weird, right? Because like I'll see her in movies like was it Marriage Story or she was in like a Woody Allen movie too, or I think she's in actually a few Woody
Yeah,
Allen movies.
yeah, she is.
And I I see her range and stuff, but I feel like she's almost like a Jared Leto, where people just see her, or like a Zoe Saldana, and they're like, oh, she's in all this genre stuff, so just put her in it. You know, like oh,
Yeah,
she's in like all the, like these new Jurassic Park movies that came out too
yeah.
recently, and I just feel like what she brings when she's in these genre things is just kind of generic, like any person could have played them.
Well, yeah, I think that she's actually really good when she like look at Lost in Translation. She's incredible in that. I think that she's, and this is true from probably all actors now, young actors. Is like you're forced to be in these movies, and so people, she's more famous as like being like Black Widow or whatever. But like these movies don't serve what she can do.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah,
Um,
so I mean, that's
yeah.
kind of what I felt when I saw her in this movie because I felt like her character is kind of like an afterthought in this movie.
She has a funny line though, referencing the last movie. She says to Optimus Prime, "You don't have the touch. You don't have the power."
Right, right, right. Yeah, she has a couple of good lines, but she's not what stands out. The whole movie is so focused on Orion Pax and D16, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's funny. Like my daughter Clementine, she's 9, and she just kept giving me this look of like, "Oh man, they're gay, right?" Like
Oh,
D16 and
interesting.
Ryan Pax, they're gay, right? Like there was a couple of moments where she'd kind of like just give a look at me, like, "Oh, they're gonna be boyfriends," you know?
That's funny because that's what my girlfriend Jen says always in movies. She'll be like, "Are they gonna kiss?" And I'm like, "They're not gonna kiss."
Right, right,
um,
right.
so they go. So there's a really brutal moment where uh Sentinel Prime is talking to Megatron, and Megatron's like so seething with anger, and he's like, but he's captured, and he sees the sticker because he has the Megatronus sticker, and he's like, "Oh, you're a big Megatronus fan, huh? Yeah, he was the best Prime. Yeah, you should have seen him when I ripped his heart out or whatever."
Yeah, yeah,
And then he's like, "Oh, you like him? Let me put that." And he takes the sticker off and he puts it on his chest, and then he uses like a blowtorch to like carve the face into, which is a cool origin of like having the Decepticon logo on their chest. But it's pretty like violent. I mean, again, like you were saying in the last episode, there's things that if you did it to a person, it'd be NC-17, but because it's a robot, they completely get away with it. Like
yeah.
carving, basically using a blowtorch to carve something into his chest is pretty fucking violent.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's a great plot point, like you just said. And then Megatron gets his revenge. He like fucking like rips Sentinel Prime in half.
Yeah, it's
A couple
brutal.
of Yeah, and the thing is like they do it where I don't. You're a film guy, so you can like explain this, but like when you have a sequence where something is happening, but it's like the sound is muted, so it kind of feels like it's like happening on the side, like it's not the main thing you should be focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they do that sequence where he's like ripping him in half,
Yeah, yeah.
and I feel like that makes it more disturbing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you do something like that, you're breaking the time and space, right? What cinema does, its greatest magic trick is it creates illusion of time and space. So when you do that, you create a sort of temporal ellipsis. It's the same thing that slow motion does. It slows down and shows you something that your eye could not naturally see. And it also like it when the sound drops off, like I one of the best examples is at the end of The Godfather Part 3 when, spoiler alert, Michael Corleone's daughter is killed. He's like screaming and crying, but then the sound drops out and you hear like this classical opera, and he's screaming, but you don't hear him screaming, but it doesn't matter. You just see the anguish on his face. It's a
Yep.
great way of focusing in on an emotion.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
also a parallel thing that's happening there at that moment because they are Megatron's gonna kill Sentinel Prime, and Optimus Prime is like, "Hey, like we got him. We showed the world. We played the recording. Everyone knows the truth. Let's just like we don't have to murder him. Let's. There's been enough destruction." And he's like, "Get the fuck out of my way!" And he shoots. He goes to shoot him, right? And Optimus Prime jumps in front of Sentinel Prime, and he gets shot like through his shoulder and gets blown off. And he's like, Megatron's holding him, And he's like, why did you do that? And then Megatron's eyes turn red, and he's like, I'm not gonna save you anymore. And he drops him. And like that's
Yep.
the moment where he really becomes Megatron.
Right.
So as he's dropped, he's like going through the Earth, and like so he's like, but as he's going through the Earth, not the Earth, he's going through Cybertron.
Cybertron.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the core of the planet. Like you start to like see all this light, and he's becoming, I guess, one with Primus, and he finds the matrix of leadership, and he becomes Optimus Prime. So that's being juxtaposed to the images of Megatron at the surface destroying, ripping the dude in half, and then giving this big speech like, "No more false prophets. We will not be deceived anymore." And a lot of the people that were with Starscream start to like worship him, and
Right.
you and he's like, I'm for now on, I'm Megatron." And then it cuts to the inside of the planet. You hear Lawrence Fishburne's voice say, you are Optimus Prime. So they're both like born in that moment.
Yeah. It's very similar to the ending of Revenge of the Sith, where like Darth Vader's being created, like the Darth Vader that we know,
Yeah.
and then they're showing like the other stuff like Padme's funeral. So there's like two separate things happening at the same time. And that kind of reminded me of that. And when Orion Pax falls through Cybertron, that kind of reminded me of 2001, like at the very end
Oh
sequence
yeah.
where so like there's sequences like that where that doesn't need to be in a kids movie. Like obviously they want to make something more there,
Yeah.
and I think it's very effective. Like it's funny because I had a time crunch when I went to go see this movie the first time, so I actually didn't even see any of that in the theater
Oh
when I
really?
went to see it the first time. And see it around the second time, I was like, "Oh shit, this ending is like really epic," And
Oh yeah, it's great.
um, Megatron, like his change is kind of quick and sudden, where he's like taking over Cybertron and stuff, where he was like this strict rule follower.
Yeah.
But if you think about like what he learns about his society, what he learns about his hero, because he worships Sentinel Prime
Yeah.
just as much as he worships, maybe not as much, but almost as much as he worships Megatronus.
Yeah.
So to have your hero be this complete and utter villain, I think it would radicalize you like it does him in
Yeah.
this movie.
And
You
there's
know?
a sweet like flashback of them meeting and like becoming friends and being like, "Oh, let's have each other's back," and they're like bump fists. So
Yeah.
as prequels go, I think it's a good prequel. Like it doesn't, like the most sweaty example of like prequelism in Solo when he's like, "Oh, I'm alone," and he's like, "Oh, so you're Han Solo?" Like that's probably like one of the worst examples of such a thing. Like this
Yep.
doesn't feel too much like that. There's not a ton of that.
No, no. There's been a couple of films and shows recently where they are prequels and they don't do that like thing where they pause the movie just to be like, see, this is this.
Yeah,
This is.
yeah.
And I hate that so much. And I think that filmmakers and TV show makers realize it's like audiences don't like that either. And so it's not as heavy handed in this movie.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
It really felt like this was trying to be the beginning, like a reboot. Like this was trying to be the beginning of a new way of doing it, and it sucks that like it's not nearly as popular as the Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, yeah. But one thing that we should point out that I didn't even mention too is that the guy that created Invincible and created The Walking Dead, those are both comics that were very famous, successful comics before the shows. Robert Kirkman, he got the rights to the Transformers comics after IDW left them. And IDW is the company that made that comic I love so much, More Than Meets the Eye, right? Um, or is it Robots in the Skies? Whatever, who gives a fuck? Anyway, he's been making a Transformers comic for like the last 2 years, and
Oh,
it is fucking phenomenal. And they're going to actually make an animated cartoon based on that comic. So I
in,
think that's going to be the next Transformers thing, and I think that that's going to bring a lot of fans into the show. And I think that like people that aren't big Transformers fans, like me and Brian, like maybe a guy like you, would actually like really get into that show.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you know? I don't know if you heard this, but they were this. You and I did an episode on Ronin, which was a Ninja Turtles comic. They were
Yep.
going to make a movie of it, and they just canceled it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sadly,
I mean, that kind of stuff unfortunately happens all the time. And it's so weird because it does almost seem like the track record is when it's good and faithful to the stuff that you love, and it's like it kind of clicks, it checks those boxes. That's when it's not a box office success.
Yeah, I
And
know.
then when it's this sort of bastardization that just has the trappings of what you love, that's when it makes $1 billion.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're this month. The trailer for Master Universe is going to come out. You were right, by the way. They are gonna the first theatrical showing of it is gonna be before the next Avatar movie, and I'm waiting with bated breath. I really want to see what Skeletor looks like. Is it gonna look good? Is it gonna look bad? What's the tone gonna be? I really want it to be good, but also I'm very I don't have the highest of hopes.
Right. And I mean, like, what's a good example is like that Masters of the Universe cartoon that we watched that we covered that was
Yeah.
on Netflix. That was a great fucking cartoon. And like, I don't think anybody really talks about that one. They talk about
No,
the
no,
Kevin
no,
Smith
no.
one, you
Yeah.
know?
I think
Yeah.
the best Masters Universe anything in the whole franchise is She-Ra, Princesses of Power, the Netflix show. And like no one gives a shit about that. Um
Right, right.
yeah, so that's it. Oh, there's a post-credit scene where like you see them putting the Decepticon logo on all of their chests. Really set up that like what the next movie is going to be. But
That'll never get made.
yeah. But you know what? Even without doing more movies, this does stand as like a good like prequel, like
Hmm.
backstory for stuff that's happened before. Even though I'm sure it doesn't all totally fit up.
Yeah.
Is the
Yeah. Well,
idea of them being friends, is that new, or is that something that existed before?
no, no, it's existed before in different versions. And then there's versions where they don't know each other at all. Like in the original cartoon, they're not friends at all. But then there's versions where they like kind of rise up together. There's versions of Optimus Prime where he's like a cop and he's Orion Pax as a cop and he becomes Optimus Prime eventually. There's a lot of versions where he's sort of like a data clerk, like he kind of works almost like an archive or something, and then he becomes Optimus Prime. In this one, he's a minor. Like that's the first time Optimus has been a minor, but Megatron has often been a minor. And a lot of times, what
Mm.
happens is he gets his following by fighting in these sort of like gladiator pits, and he gets a
Okay.
following as being this tough, badass gladiator, and that's how he kind of rises to power.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how would you to wrap up, how would you rank this film amongst the Transformers films?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like the first one's gonna be the Transformers the movie. That's number one for me. Then the Bumblebee one with Haley Steinfeld. Then this. Then there's Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, which came out a couple of years ago, which is another live action one. And then like all the Michael Bay films.
What's that? Isn't there like a King Arthur one?
Oh,
What
that's
what is
the
that?
Last Night. Yeah, it's fucking horrible. It's the fifth Michael Bay one. It's so bad. It's yeah.
At some point Charlotte Booth leaves, right?
Yeah, he does three movies, and then there's two with Mark Wahlberg, and all of them are
All of
bad.
them are bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shame. So right now, is there any Transformers show, or is it just comics? Where's the
Yeah,
franchise currently?
yeah, that's a great question. So there isn't any kind of animated show for kids right now. There is the company that Robert Kirkman owns is called Skybound, and that is owned by Image Comics, which Image
Uh-huh.
makes a lot of things. Like if I said some Image Comics, you'd probably recognize some of them, and some of them have been made
Right.
into movies or shows. But Skybound owns like the Hasbro stuff, so like Transformers, GI Joe, Mask, other stuff too. And so they have GI Joe and they have Transformers comics, and there's crossover between all of them. It's called the Energon universe, and it's really, really fucking good. And like I said, they are going to make a cartoon based on that Transformers comic.
Okay. Okay. And it's gonna be a show?
Yeah, it'll be like Invincible, where it'll be like on Amazon, and it'll probably be kind of brutal too.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
Good, 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 good.
yeah.
Last episode we didn't have any chance to talk about your channel and your output. Um, tell the folks that are new to you about what you do on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. So the most relevant to this discussion would be my channel, Comic Books Transformed, where me and my friend Brian discuss comics that have been adapted into movies and TV shows. Brian is a gigantic Transformers fan. That's why it's called Comic Books Transformed, right?
Uh huh.
Um, and we've talked about Transformers stuff on there. You guys can go check it out over there. Uh, we've had a bit of a drought with the stuff that we've been covering. So like we've been doing Star Wars Visions, which has been around for a while
Yeah.
now, and we haven't even like recorded that kind of consistently recently. But I know in 2026 we're going to be getting a whole bunch of shows, and things to cover. So we usually cover whatever's on like Disney Plus with like Star Wars or Marvel. And then for my other channel, the Lastercast, it's the opposite. We're like kind of eating pretty right now. We're like, we're covering It, Welcome to Derry, which is surprisingly good.
Uh-huh.
We just covered the first 4 episodes of Stranger Things for season 5. There's movies that we've covered recently. We cover horror movies. So like within the next month, we'll do our top 10 horror movies of 2025, and I'm looking forward to that. So I mean, like that's a great channel. That's with my friend Danny. So yeah, you guys should check that one
Very
out too.
nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
Peter,
man.
thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your passion for Transformers.
Yes,
Finally, there's PCMC episodes about Transformers, so the logo makes sense.
yes.
We end every episode by saying,
I'll say it like Starscream. Go bye bye.